The poem I analyzed is God's Grandeur by Gerard Manley Hopkins. This poem is separated into two stanzas, the first having 8 lines and the second having 6. The first stanza is written in an ABBA pattern that repeats twice. The second stanza is different, being written in an ABAB pattern, cutting off short of 2 repetitions with only half the pattern in the last 2 lines. The narrator of this poem is undetermined, so we can assume it is just a common person with a very serious concern for the way the world is being treated. The figurative language used in this poem is small amounts of imagery, shown in lines 2. It will flame out like shining from shook foil. 3. It gathers to a greatness, like the ooze of oil. 11 through 12. And though the last lights off the black west went, O morning at the brown brink eastward brings. And 13 through 14, because the Holy Ghost over the bent world broods with warm breast and with bright wings. The tone of this poem seems like there is a sense of dislike and disappointment in the human race because of the intense amount of disrespect and lack of care we have given to the world, and that we should have treated it far better than we have because of what a wonderful creation of God the world really is. The subject of this poem that Hopkins appears to be trying to get across seems almost like a question directed towards the reader. This question is, how can we, as beings of God as well, so willingly ravage and destroy the earth that he created and put his energy into? Throughout the poem, an answer to this question is never particularly stated, but the question is discussed in the poem. The narrator starts the poem by saying that the world is full of God's greatness, with the line, "The world is charged with the grandeur of God." This line stands out from the others because it does not pertain, for the most part, to the rest of the poem. The fact that Hopkins did this shows that this line is most likely important. Showing it out from the others is a topic that will be very important to the poem. The next 2 lines describe the way God's greatness moves throughout the earth, as this poem states. These lines read, "It will flame out like shining from shook foil. It gathers to a greatness like the ooze of oil." The first line compares God's power and grandeur to the light that shines and reflects off of foil, which is bright and spreads out, and, when multiple people are near it, it tends to catch people's attention. The second line compares this to the way oil pools up and gradually gets larger and larger, spreading over whatever its amount can cover, assuming that this is quite a lot. It seems Hopkins is saying that God's greatness could spread over the whole earth like how oil pools up from a well. Lines 4 through 8 address the main topic, the question that Hopkins appears to imply throughout the poem. The first line reads, "Crushed, why do men then now not wreck his rod?" The word crushed could imply that we are degrading the power of God throughout the world by ruining it as humans, or it could be the narrator speaking of their own feelings, saying they feel crushed at the mistreatment of the world. Then, the line after it may be asking how man could stand to do such things without wishing to break their tools used on the earth. Or it could be questioning how God's greatness flowing through the earth does not destroy the humanly tools used on it. I would say it is probably the first, considering throughout this poem the narrator does not say anything hinting that that they doubt God's power. Lines 5 through 8 then discuss how humankind has destroyed the earth. These lines say, "Generations have trod, and all is seared with trade, bleared, smeared with toil, and wears man's smudge and shares man's smell. The soil is bare now, nor can foot feel, being shod." This shows that generation after generation have left their mark on the world in negative ways, whether it be through destruction or tramping nature down underfoot. In line 7, the narrator says that earth has become tainted by man's smudge and smell, showing that they feel that the earth is no longer so much natural as it is more man-made. Line 8 states how bare the soil now is, assumably because of buildings taking up most natural spaces. And it says that foot no longer can feel because it is shod, perhaps stating that we are nearly blind to those negative things because of the luxuries we now prize over the natural world. In stanza 2, things begin to look up, and the narrator's tone seems to become brighter. Lines 9 and 10 say, "And for all this, nature is never spent. There lives the dearest freshness, deep down things. These lines state that despite all of the stress we've put on nature and how we've ravaged the land, there will always be some bit of nature somewhere, whether that be deep underground or somewhere in a remote area across the ocean. Nature won't ever completely die out. The next two lines read, "And though the last lights off the black west went, O morning at the brown brink eastward springs." These lines represent the sunrise and the sunset. Sunsets tend to represent death in some form, and sunrises represent new life. This portion of the poem shows that even though the sun will set and some natural things will die, that the sun will always rise again in the next morning and new natural things will be created and thrive. Lines 14 and 15 conclude the poem on a very light and even reassuring note, reading, "Because the Holy Ghost over the bent world broods with warm breast and bright wings." This ending shows that no matter how much damage his creation has caused to each other and his other wonderful creations, or how twisted and skewed the human race becomes, he will always constantly watch over and protect us and the earth. He will keep things going just as he always has, for all eternity, even though we do not treat him with as much respect as we always should. With those two lines, the poem ends on a light note that seems to reassure the narrator and would seemingly also reassure anyone with the same concern as them.